All right. Well, let's hope this works. I think I got everything pretty much working well. So we're just gonna get started. Gonna try doing live streams every Saturday. You know, for the most part, I think last week's I couldn't do it just because of internet outages, things like that. Anyway, um, so what we are going to talk about today is, as the title says, it's about fish food. So I'm going to go through my fish food bin, all of the different fish foods I have. Actually, it's kind of low right now. Usually, I have a lot more, but I've been kind of trying to get rid of some of this stuff since it's starting to expire. A note on that: yes, fish food does expire. Eventually, it will go bad. If you get something like this, it'll probably last longer. I think some of the more high-end stuff would believe is more time sensitive, but fish probably don't care that much. If you think about it in the wild, they just eat whatever they can. So I wouldn't put too much stock into it, but try not to give them rancid food, of course. So we're just going to go through. I'm kind of going to review several different items, what I like, what I don't. A good like fish that you could use this for, or situations to use it for. I'm not going to give it like a number scale because a lot of these are like the difference between fish food nowadays is pretty small. So you don't. I mean, most fish food's going to be okay to some extent. Some are better than others, but again, fish will eat it nonetheless. So we'll dive right in. Probably start from my less used ones to more used ones. So these are cichlid pellets. I don't have cichlids, so I don't really use these. These guys are, let me see if I can just, without getting it all over. Use it for guppies, but only the largest of my guppies have much larger than that. Maybe the Danios. If you really wanted to split hairs, I'm gonna have to vacuum this carpet later. But most of my fish will not be able to eat something that's even this big because it doesn't break down. It's good at sinking, so eventually it will kind of get some moisture in there, and these pellets will need a little stand to put on the side of my computer. These pellets will break down, which could make them good for bottom feeders like cories, things like that, that can kind of eat it once it's broken down. So I don't use this very often, very rarely, but I know some of my guppies will eat them. So I guess it's okay in terms of fish food. Moving on, we have these PE pellets. These guys, I don't know if this camera can pick that up. Okay, actually, that's not bad. All right, so if you can see that, those are the pellets. They're kind of less round, more like granule, fluffy shaped. That is much better. They do sink very slowly. It says slow sinking. Mine sit at the surface for almost ever, unless you like poke at them, and then eventually they'll sink. So I don't even consider them that much of a sinking pellet. They can just kind of be a floating pellet, if you will. I don't have any more. I've used all of them. But PE Mysis, they have good quality products. That's a free plug for them. Gonna get a lot of free plugs today, but they do have a very good nutrition scale for your fish. They will eventually sink, so you can use them for things like cories, but you can also use them for fish because they do float at the surface for a while, unless you put water on the top of them. But a pretty decent product. I don't use it all too often right now, just because I don't have very many cories, and the fish out in the pond get other food. Plus, with the pump out there, this would actually sink very quickly, which isn't good for the guppies. Moving on. This is something most people probably have around if you have some kind of algae wafer. It's okay. I don't really use them very often. Maybe to feed my Amanos every once in a while, or to supplement in their diet. But if you have plecos, if you have any really rasping fish, ottos, things like that, this is going to be a staple just to have around. If you don't have any algae for them to eat, you can toss one of these in there, and at least there's some food around. Or better yet, I like to break it up into chunks and spread it around the tank. That way, there's different feeding stations, one, and two, it increases the likelihood that some of those fish or inverts will find them possibly before a quarry or something goes and munches them down. So these are pretty good. They're this one says it's like omega 3s and things like that. Whatever. Most algae wafers are pretty good. I'm sure there are some high quality ones you can get that will really be healthy for your fish, but I don't really have that many algae eaters. I just have my Amanos, and I have plenty of algae for them to keep. Here's one that unfortunately I'm going to review because I hope it reaches the ears of Sarah. I don't know why it would, but I follow Aquarium Co-op's thought. From what I've been told, these Sarah Onip tabs, which I'll pull these guys out. They look like these little wafers, and you can stick them on the glass. And it's great because the fish will come up, they'll pick at it. It falls into very little flakes, so it's got lots of tiny food for fry. It's also got food for like bottom feeders. Tons of food will hit the bottom. The fish go crazy for it. It just goes on and on of good reviews for this. But unfortunately, I've heard they've changed the way that they make these to a more natural way, I believe, and they don't stay together as well, and I don't believe they even stick to the glass. So it's really unfortunate because these were a staple. I love these as kind of that one dessert type treat for the fish. The fish go nuts for it. It's also really good if you're worried about any fish disease. Getting them all really close to the front glass makes it very easy for you to look at them and identify any illnesses or any deformities, anything like that. So very helpful tool for medicating and taking care of your fish. Also great food for the fish. Food quality wise, it's okay. It is still like a flake food, but all things considered, the fish really love it, and that's the important thing. So if you're listening, Sarah, change it back to this. It may not be the healthiest thing in the world, but healthy versus happiness. In my case, I want my fish to be happy, and this made them happy. So bring back the old Sarah Onip tabs. But those are a good product if you can still find them in like your local fish store or something. They have them. Grab them up now because in a couple months there won't be any more. So here's another one, Bug Bites. They have a good quality. Let me open this bad boy up. They have a good quality flake of various sizes. They do all kinds of stuff. But it's from insect larvae and salmon recipe. It's pretty good in terms of like nutrition. I had a different type of bug bite that I used. I think it was a flake or maybe even the smaller version of this. I can't remember. But that my fish enjoyed a lot. This one I don't use very much. Unfortunately, the granules are still kind of big. Like the guppies might be able to do it, but when I'm feeding my pond, I also have to worry about the fry, and the fry definitely can't have that. So it's okay if you have some larger fish. I would definitely recommend that as a good kind of flake food, or just grab and dump in the tank food. Moving on. This, I think everyone should have. This is Hikari's Vibra Bites. They are this is a good food. Pretty healthy. It does enhance the color. I can say for a fact that yes, when I feed this to my fish, their color gets brighter. With that said, a lot of foods on the market nowadays will do that to some extent. I think this does very well. What I really like about it is that they make them in the shape of like worms or bugs or something, and they float at the surface. They are kind of a, it says very slow sinking. I think this is very slow sinking. This is like kind of slow, or yeah. Um, but with that said, my fish go crazy for it. They really enjoy it, and it does work well with picky eaters. Some of the harder fish that I've had, like celestial pearl danios, things like that, to get them to eat anything but frozen food. This does a really good job of weaning them onto other flake foods and things. If you want to go that route, or you can just keep feeding this to them. This is probably every other night of the week. I'll feed this to them, and then we'll talk about what I feed them the other nights of the week. Okay, moving on. This is Beta Bites. So this is a beta treat. It's like just like your kind of freeze-dried mealworms that you get for geckos and stuff. This is good for betas. It says not to feed it to them constantly as like a treat. What I've done in the past is if you want to try and practice with your beta, this is actually a good reward system. So since betas are a little bit smarter than other fish, you can kind of train them. Some people get them to jump through hoops and things like that. But mine, I was just doing it to practice flaring because it can be healthy for a beta. If you guys have questions about that, feel free to ask or leave them down in the comments. But this I would use as kind of that reinforcement, the positive reinforcement that gets the beta to flare. So this was a good one every once in a while to feed to Mr. Bird or any betas I had. And they did enjoy it. They would come right up for it. It definitely looks like a worm and something that they would grab and try and bite at. Next one, Shrimp King Mineral. Shrimp King, or Dennerle, I guess, is the company that makes it. But their pellets are very good. This is a, I can't talk today. This is a shrimp food. You can also grind it up and use it for filter feeders like bamboo shrimp or vampire shrimp, things like that. But I use this, I think it's like every other day or every third day. I will put one of these in each of my shrimp tanks. Usually I'll break it up so there's different feeding stations again. I think that's a very good idea to help keep aggression down when feeding. But there's many different forms of this Shrimp King food. I think they're still making them. I'm not positive on that. For some reason, my gut says that Dennerle and Shrimp King had a falling out, but I can't remember. So you may want to check that out for yourself. But anyway, if you can get your hands on this, there are various different kinds of it, and they are very good for the health of your shrimp, especially if you have crystal shrimp, because they have very soft water, but they still need minerals like calcium to help grow their shells. You're going to have to supplement that in their diet. So something like Shrimp King Mineral is going to help give that back into their diet so they can molt and make those eggs and more of those babies that you want. So definitely get your hands on some good quality shrimp food for any good shrimp keeper or shrimp breeder. But more so if you are a crystal red, something like Shrimp King is going to be important for you because you don't want to lose them. But you want to keep growing them, and that's a challenging task, so you need high quality food. That's just my 2 cents on that. But anyway, I can pop this guy open. I don't know if I can get that lighting. You can kind of see it. Sorry, it's not the best. But those are like just kind of cylindrical pellets, but they are very good food for any shrimp. I would say any shrimp hobbyist should have some kind of food like that on hand. You can do some algae wafers, but that's just not really ideal because shrimp are really detritivores, so they do also need some like meat protein in their diet. All right, moving on. We have Aqueon goldfish granules. So this was given to me when I bought like a fish tank stand, and the person's like, "I don't want it anymore. You just take it." So you can see in there, round little pellets. Once again, I'm sure you can guess the reason I don't use these is they are kind of large. Some of the larger guppies still could eat them, but all things considered, I didn't really want the food. It's like this is what I would consider like a Friskies in terms of fish food. So not that like it's okay, you know, it's a decent food because nowadays most food's pretty decent, but in terms of everything, pretty much the first like 4 or 5 things end with meal, which is not a good sign. So it'll fatten your fish up, but it's also not that great for your fish in the long run. So I don't use it that often, but it is an option. Um, Dirty sponge. If you have one, you can take it, and if you're comfortable with doing it, this is good to squeeze inside of a tank with filter feeders like bamboo shrimp or vampire shrimp again. It also is very good for just like little shrimp tanks. The shrimp will love to pick the bacteria and the detritus and stuff out of these. So you can either just like set it in a tank, or what I do is when I rinse out my sponge, squeeze it out in a bucket of the tank water. When you do that, it will end up making that dirty brown water and just sprinkling a bit of that in each tank. Also, that's very helpful for seeding a tank. That dirty brown water has lots of bacteria, good bacteria that will help start that nitrogen cycle going. All right. So good for shrimp and filter feeders. Next one. This is another one I use very heavily. This is Aquarium Co-op's Easy Fry Food. I think everyone should have this, quite honestly, because, excuse me, I need some water. One, you can rest a lot easier if you accidentally get fry, which lots of people do, having this on hand, because it will save you the worry of having to find brine shrimp or something very quickly, which isn't always easy to do. So it comes out with a little funnel. You just kind of squeeze it, and it shoots out a very fine powder. Again, really great for filter feeders, good for fries, so especially good for breeders. I've used it sometimes with shrimp because it's very small, so they can just pick it right up. But I've had this probably for 5 or 6 months now, and I use it every couple of days, and that's how far I've got. So this will last you a very long time unless you're going very heavy at it. So, this says $10. I don't know if that price has changed, but if it's $10, it's definitely worth all those $10 because it will last you a long time, and it's good for a wide variety of fish, and basically any mouth can eat it because it's so small, the exception being some very, very small fry, like rainbow fish, stuff like that. But those are rare situations, so I think this is a very good food in a lot of situations. So if you're starting out and you just want a big blanket one, this combo is great for when it comes to dry food. It'll last you a while. The fish will enjoy it, and you should have success with most any fish with that combo. I wish I could throw Sarah Onip tabs in there, but sadly I can't anymore because of what's happened. One more. This is mostly for breeders. Sponge filters. If you don't already know, sponge filters are extremely helpful for shrimp. This is where they're going to spend most of their time because they can pick little pieces of bacteria and all that gunk off of it and eat it. That's what they want to do. So a sponge filter and a shrimp tank, basically have it. That's the only way I would run filtration in any shrimp tank is via sponge filter. On top of that, they are great for aeration, so I don't have to worry about gassing my fish or any problems like that overnight, which can be the case if you have a canister filter or something. So there's a lot of cases to argue about sponge filters. I'll make an ode to sponge filter video sometime later. But for now, in terms of fish keeping, it's very good for shrimp. Yeah, that's what I would say. So moving on. Oh, all right. We're out of dry goods. Right back. All right. So I need to keep these guys frozen. Frozen brine shrimp. This is the other day item. This is like filet mignon for your fish. If your fish isn't eating this, they're either very, very picky or they're sick, because I haven't come across any fish who will not accept frozen brine shrimp. It's extremely good for them. It's got lots of protein. It is what it says. So it's not just a mix of stuff. It is just brine shrimp that has been frozen into cubes. So very good for your shrimp. I use this every other night of the week. I'm a big fan of this. I would say this is one thing that every good aquarist should have. If you can't afford it, okay, I understand. But if you can afford it, definitely have it. Brine shrimp, right here. This is mysis. This is for a little bit bigger. We're talking angelfish size. This is basically anything small, like a Cory or something like that, all the way up. This is a little bit bigger for some larger fish, but it does work very well. Also, saltwater people, both of these work in saltwater tanks, of course, whereas the others, I wouldn't. I mean, you could try, but I wouldn't. So this is another good one. If you have a little bit larger fish, I actually put this in my pond. Pro tip, frozen cubes will float, thawed cubes will not. So if you want to kind of create a feeding block, you can put these at the top of the tank. The fish will come pick at it as it slowly thaws, and you can kind of do it that way if you don't have the time to let it sit in another container, thaw out, and then separate it out. So that's a good pro tip. I use that in my pond. I pop frozen cubes in there. They'll float so the guppies can see them at the surface, and then they'll pick at them until it's gone. Another good one is krill. This is another one that's good for saltwater tanks as well. I don't use this much anymore because it's too big for my fish, but this would be good for cichlids. Some of the larger fish, they'll definitely accept this because it's got lots of protein. It also will help add some red color if you have some larger red fish. That pigmentation of krill will help add that color to them. But then again, a lot of foods will do that. Brine shrimp do the same thing as well, just for a fact. But they will just color up any fish because it's healthy and good for them. All right. Well, that's all I have for today. I'm just going to conclude probably with my top 5 if I had to throw it in. 1, brine shrimp, definitely. 2, Hikari Vibrobites. 3, Aquarium Co-op's Easy Fry Food. And 4, I think it's going to be any of the Shrimp King foods in terms of shrimps. If you're not a shrimp keeper, sorry, this one doesn't apply to you, but nothing I can do about that. And then 5, I think I'm going to go with PE Mysis. As much as I'd love to put Sarah Own it probably as the 4 or maybe even the 3, they just don't make it anymore, and so I can't throw it on this list. Sad to say. PE Mysis, I would go with like their flake food, or even if they have smaller food. I'm not sure. This is just like a sampler pack. But any of their product line, I think, is very good in terms of quality and good for your fish, all of that good stuff. So that's where I would finish. A few items I don't have here that I would point out is any of the various frozen foods. They do have like a freshwater sampler pack that I've used multiple times in the past that has like spirulina tabs. I like that one a lot because you get a variety of different foods which cover a lot of different bases, and I think is healthier for the fish in the long run. But if you have any comments or questions about any of the food I talked about today, or if you have any suggestions of foods you think I should try that I can maybe review later, let me know down in the comments below, or maybe what your favorite foods are. So leave a comment down below. Let's get a conversation going about fish food and see where we go from there. But that's all I have today. I think next week we're going to talk about, I believe it's chems. I think it's going to be talking about chems and testing your water. So that's going to be a fun conversation that no one's going to want to have because no one likes to do it, but it's extremely important, especially for you plant keepers. So we're going to talk about it next week. So stick around or tune in for that. Again, goal is around this time. I don't know the hour yet, but I'm thinking 9 or 10 on Saturday is what I'm going to be going for from here on out. But that's all I got. So I hope you all enjoyed. Hope you learned some stuff. Maybe you will be purchasing some of these items. With that, one quick thing. These two, Aquarium Co-op. These items, local fish store. Dennerley. It used to be Aquarium Co-op. They might still have it, but check Amazon. Bug Bites. Pretty sure it's Amazon, local fish store. I know mine has them. Same thing with PE Mysis. And then Old Sarah Onip tabs. Probably the black market, but if you can find them at your local fish store, buy all of them because you'll thank me later. All right, that's all I got. I'm out of here before I start rambling more. See y'all later. Be great.